Evening and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. It has been exactly 3 weeks and 1 day since the Free National Movement government took office after a landslide victory at the polls on May 10th. As promised, this government has gotten to work right away and is now reporting that the Christie administration has left the cupboards bare. While presenting the budget for the fiscal year 2017-2018 in the House of Assembly on Wednesday, the Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Peter Turnquest, said the fiscal state of the Bahamas is even more bleak than the incoming government suspected. The new government has found itself in a position of having to borrow some $722 million to take care of some debt and fulfill some of the campaign promises. We will be discussing the budget tonight and, of course, some components of the transition following Decision 2017. Our guests for tonight's discussion are Reece Chipman, Member of Parliament for the Centreville constituency and a noted accountant, and Mr. Andrew Dud Maynard, a businessman known politically and a former chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party. We're going to welcome them onto our show in just a few moments. It's all on the record, and I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer.
Record is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive.
With a world of offers from Alive, you can set yourself free. Buy any $99 handset and get a second handset free. Plus everything you need for both phones, all for free. It's our biggest offer ever. We are Alive.
The government is now committed to looking seriously at other measures to boost the economy outside of tourism. Minister of Finance, the Honourable Peter Turnquest, spoke to a number of upcoming fiscal challenges during the budget presentation on Wednesday.
Mr. Speaker, in presenting this very first budget of our government's current mandate, we are once again confronted with the same challenges that have been left by our predecessors in the past. In fact, the administration that we now replace may well have surpassed itself in the level of incompetence displayed in any of their previous mandates, as they managed to generate either zero or negative growth in the Bahamian economy over 4 straight years after the 2012 elections. Quite astonishingly, it is estimated that the economy will still be smaller in 2017 than it was in 2012. And this despite 5 years of steady population and labor force growth. This is a dubious achievement indeed, and may be arguably unsurpassed in the history of our nation. It is little wonder then that the electorate returned such a justifiably harsh and decisive verdict as it did on our predecessor's performance and fitness to govern. For it is evident that a dismal economic performance on such a scale over the last 5 years flowed directly from the ineptitude of the previous administration, their weak leadership, and their complete disregard for the basic transparency and accountability requirements of sound governance. In addition, their lax management of the nation's public finances, in large part through questionable and excessive expenditure, led directly to missed fiscal targets, sharp increases in the level of public debt, and credit rating downgrades to junk status.
Minister of Finance, the Honourable Peter Turnquest, during yesterday's budget communication. Rhys Chipman and Andrew Dodd Maynard are my guests tonight. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Rhys, I'm going to start with you. First of all, congratulations on your victory at the polls recently.
Thank you.
A very significant and historic win in many ways, but the financial and fiscal position that Peter Turnquest spoke to in the House of Assembly on Wednesday, was there any indication from a party perspective, even from a national perspective, that they were going to meet what they met when they took office? The government would meet these things?
Well, I don't, I don't think we expected to meet up to $400,000, 400 million, sorry, over their 100 million deficit that they had anticipated. And so no, there were no indications. However, in their speech from the throne in 2012, they had indicated that there would be no contracts issued or no sort of commitments in terms of pre-election commitments. However, what is going on now is that, and like Minister Turnquest would have indicated, the amount we have still not yet determined as vendors continue to come in for payment for arrangements or contracts that would have been done prior to, up to days prior to the last elections.
What could have really, in your estimation, happened to create such a debt under the previous administration?
Well, what would have been stated by the Progressive Liberal Party was the fact that they spent quite a number of, some millions of dollars based on the Hurricane Matthew. That is one aspect of it. However, I think when you look at their procurement processes that might have been mismanaged in terms of contracts being issued and any sort of standards or procedures that should have been followed when you are issuing contracts, all of that played a role in the misuse or the difference in terms of what they had originally anticipated.
But I know that you worked on assisted the FNM in their campaign and worked along with them. Was there any indication from your perspective, even from the general public's perspective, that you were going to see a astonishing deficit of some 500 million this time around?
I thought it would have been more. And
why?
I could briefly tell you, I saw sidewalks going on Cowpen Road, Bacardi Road, all about around the place. As a matter of fact, the fella locked me into my property, right across my driveway, and told my wife she'd have to raise the yard. He's lucky I wasn't there. But the point is, they put jacklegs to do this work. And I don't think they were paid the money that they charged there. That's my opinion, my personal opinion. I think that was a way of siphoning off the money. Okay? Don't forget, Bradley said he had $4 million and growing before the whole thing got started, remember? Bradley Roberts said so. He had $4 million to spend, and the amount is growing. Well, when I was in the PLP, we never paid people for votes. As a matter of fact, we wanted to completely abolish that habit. You see? So, in short, they use these things to siphon off the money.
So what you're alleging then is that these contracts were given and things were paid out in exchange for support for the PLP?
More than support. Money came back, kickbacks. I think kickbacks carried on, okay? Now, they could prove me wrong if they want to.
One of the things that the Minister administration has said they will do is a fiscal audit and a financial audit of all of the ministries and the monies that were spent. Do you think that will help to get to the root of what happened and get to the root and begin to explain why this deficit is so high?
Yeah, I think it's important to have an audit of the ministries, though quick they will need to be in order to move forward. An audit will help us to at least identify where the spending took place or where the revenue was coming in. But most importantly, we need to identify moving forward what direction we want to send, place those funds.
So a lot of people, and the question on the minds of a lot of voters is, once you discover where these monies have gone, if they were illegally gotten, if kickbacks were involved, things of that nature, are people going to be prosecuted? Are people going to be made to pay for mishandling the government's money, or the people's money, I should say? Either of you?
Well, I mean, from the parliamentary perspective, the audit will take place, and the administration will decide what they do with the results of the audit.
How an audit works, and then you would have come from that field. How an audit works is you get in and you look to see where where things went right and where things went wrong. And at the end of the day, some action, an action is recommended. Is that not correct?
Well, I would hope that, what happens, it really depends on the type of audit. Because if you go into, usually you would not have prosecution in a regular audit. A prosecution usually would come about during a forensic audit. Because now they're more detailed. Right. And so, of course, the auditors would make recommendation by way of whether it's a management letter or just a recommendation report. And then from there, the administration will decide what they would do.
Now, do you think that people should be prosecuted and something should come out of all of this? You're talking about all kinds of money to do these forensic audits and to get to the bottom of what happened.
Sure, I think they should be prosecuted. My great-grandchildren will probably have to pay to replace this money that has just disappeared. So why shouldn't they be prosecuted? A fella going down the road and he steals a pineapple or some oranges from across the way. Police come for him. So why they can't come for this fella or the fellas involved?
You think the people will have an appetite for that?
Yeah, but as a matter of fact, I think if it doesn't happen, Minister will be a one-term prime minister.
Honestly, do you think that will happen?
The word on the street is find them and prosecute them. That's the word on the street. The average man, and look here, I have gotten common sense out of people who didn't reach as far as grade 4 in school through the years, right? All they know is their houses haven't been fixed since and all this money is gone. Where did it go? They want to know where it went, and they want who put it out there or stole it or whatever to be prosecuted.
The government has vowed to move forward, has vowed to reduce business license fees, customs duties on medical equipment, food items, building material. Can this satisfy the masses for now, as it is being said that the government has to hold back on some campaign promises for now, based on what the government says it met in place, and wanting to carry on this fiscal discipline and responsibility? Do you think that this will appease people, the masses for now?
Well, it's a good starting point, right? It is a good starting point, and the masses should see some benefit. Because once you're reducing business license and, of course, some customs duties, there will be some immediate benefit. And so this would appease the masses to a degree, as long as we do it at the same time as we watch our fiscal management, as we have management process with our fiscal responsibility. And so I think once there is some relief. However, what they would like to see more of is how we're managing our spending. Mm-hmm. And so you have to do it together at the same time, simultaneously.
People complained about the exorbitant business license, VAT, etc., on top of the customs duties. These are the kinds of things people are looking forward to. That on a day-to-day basis, do you think this is going to impact the lives of Bahamians? And are they going to begin to feel some relief that they've been crying out for?
They will feel relief because, I mean, if you go to business licensing and you put in all the papers you're supposed to put in, all the information, sometimes it takes 6 months and they haven't given you your license yet. So if you're watching the man on the street who brings in information for his license, why aren't you watching the man in the cabinet? Why should he get away with doing nonsense? And why should a cabinet minister be able to, from the top to the bottom, spend our money without permission from the House?
Very good point. Gentlemen, we are at the point of our first break. Stay with us. We are back on the record right after this.
What are you doing?
Calling the bank to order more checks.
Go to epbahamas.com and order your checks from Executive Printers.
Executive Printers. We're the authority in business and personal check printing in the Bahamas. Come in and see one of our specialists or visit us online at epbahamas.com to design and order your checks today.
Faster internet speeds for free when you get TV, internet, and phone. Ask for Trio from Rev. Rev, join the revolution.
Welcome back to On the Record. The budget has been presented in the House of Assembly by the Finance Minister, but opposition members are not happy. They are saying the budget serves as groundwork for political bashing and mocks the fact that the FNM government has to start out by borrowing millions of dollars to operate and pay bills. We continue our discussions with Andrew Dudmaynar and Reece Chipman as we explore this transition of the FNM government as it takes office, and also the transition of the PLP as it comes into a new interim leader with a possible new beginning. Just for the record, we invited several high-ranking members of the PLP to join us on this week's show, but to no avail. Let's get back to our discussion. Before we get back into the budget discussion, Reece, in the past few hours, there have been some photos and even a video of some sexually explicit things going on and claiming to be you. From what we've been able to see and hear now, some actions are being taken. I want to address that really and get your feedback on that. I saw it and was disappointed, to say the least, that it seemed that we had really sunk that low in our politics.
Yeah, well, I'll keep my response limited, just for the purposes of investigation. However, I just want to go to the speech from the throne, which speaks to the government recognizing the influence of the internet in all aspects of our lives and the use and misuse of social media. My government will place emphasis on the detection of financial, commercial, and cyber crimes. And I say that because, of course, the social media could be misused. It is being misused. Yeah. And of course, persons decide that they want to do whatever they think they're capable of doing in terms of their technological expertise or what have you to create these images. And for me, I first of all, I felt very sad for the individual that thought this was important for them to bring to social media, because it is a small country, and fabrication in itself is is criminal. And I think when we get into the social media aspect of things, we have to be very careful. And so without preempting anything further or anything that may result from it, at the very least, you know, we would like persons and people to know that the misuse of social media could in fact may not bode well for your circumstances.
Did you ever, when you got into politics, expect these kinds of things to happen? I mean, I was saddened because, one, you're a Bahamian at the end of the day. We're all one people, no matter what the outcome of the election is and who you support and didn't support, we're all one people. Secondly, you have a family with children.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, the way you, of course, I don't think anyone expects that their life would be this charade as such. You know, but you do go into it with a sense of open-mindedness, and the fact that your character, your belief systems, the way you think about certain things may be challenged. However, I don't think anyone wants to involve or go to the extent where family life is part of a charade or an attack on someone. And so I agree with you, we're all Bahamians, and I think it's important for us as a people, though, to recognize that we're out of campaign mode. The campaign is over, and we're now into administration. And the FNM administration is now ready to move forward with its agenda. And these sorts of distractions, though, you know, as a politician as well as a business person, I am able to move on and move forward. We still have to reflect on family life and this sort of the impact on family life. And you know, for us, you know, we're family. I believe in the fact that, you know, we pray together, so we will stay together. And I think the good thing, Jerome, my children are 7, 5, and 2. It may have been a different story had they been 15, 13, and 12, because at that point now the drama extends into their conscientiousness and what they believe and think. And so at this point, though, you know, I think social media, we need to address the use and the misuse of social media in terms of the negative impact it could have on social and economic development.
And just so that we are on the record, I need you to say unequivocally, was that you in the photo or the video?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Right? No, absolutely not. Not even circumstantially.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Well, let's move on now back to our discussion on the debate. The police will get $5.6 million for the balance of overtime pay. The Ministry of Public Service, National Insurance gets some $35 million for health insurance premium, $16 million for pensions, $6 million for gratuities, $10.6 million for office rent, just to name a few. That's a lot of money allotted out. Can the FNM meet its mandate and keep its promises as outlined in the manifesto and on the campaign trail, having to meet all of these commitments, and with the debt being $400 million more than they would have anticipated?
The FNM, as far as I'm concerned, Jerome, has to meet those payments because they inherited the debt. Any government that's worth its salt that comes to power must carry on the debt. And the people who are owed aren't responsible for the big deficit. So you got to find a way to pay these people. As simple as that.
With it being a new government, new cabinet in many respects, I'm sure that's going to create some challenges, because as with the previous prime ministers, they would have had some experience with coming into office and meeting debt or meeting commitments. But now you've got
we've got a competent man as Minister of Finance, you know. He's very competent. So he's going to figure out a way for us to do it. And where we have to cut down on some expenditures here and some there, we're going to have to do it. In a couple of years, we'll be back on our feet. Believe me.
I think the country will be pleasantly surprised when we come under that deficit that we would have
So you anticipate coming under it?
I do anticipate. I myself personally anticipate coming under. I think, like Mr. Maynard would have indicated, Mr. Minister Turnquest is quite competent. He understands that there are structural impediments, and as an accountant, a chartered accountant, a CPA, we know how to deal with structural impediments to get the results that we need to get. So I think the broader scope of what the budget entails is the fact that we intend to be fiscally responsible. We intend to use the Office of the Auditor General to its fullest in terms of ensuring that the capacity and the resources are there to ensure that we're able to stay in line with what it is that we budgeted.
The National Insurance Board, the Bahamas Electrical Corporation, BIS, Bahamas Information Services, etc., have recently experienced executive employees being removed from office. Investigations are taking place. BAIC has seen several people incarcerated. PLP is crying out victimization. Are these moves acts of petty victimization as perpetrated by the PLP? Mr. Maynard, I want to talk your take.
All I could advise the PLP is that they should not judge us by their standards.
Meaning?
Meaning, we don't practice the same kind of governance. Okay? You heard Minister, when he was having his ministers sworn in, tell them, if you do any nonsense in my government, I will fire you. And if the permanent secretary knew about it and didn't say anything to me about it, he or she will be fired too. That's plain and simple. We are not going to tolerate people undercutting or overcharging and getting kickbacks.
What about those people, though, who were hired under the previous administration in various roles and have now found themselves out of work and saying, oh, we've been victimized because we supported the PLP?
Well, you know, I would like to add to what Mr. Maynard indicated. The FNM has always been held at a different standard by the public service, by the police office, the forces, our armed forces, by the general public. We've always been held at a higher standard than the Progressive Liberal Party. Having this Minister Turnquest, at the helm really bodes well for us because he does have the background. And when we start to talk about whether you keep someone or move someone, it really would be, like we had spoken about earlier, structural impediments that will impede progress. And so at some point in time, and you know, and this is one of the reason why it's important at some point in the future, I guess, to have transition teams, because someone needs to be able to have prepared an action plan of transition. Well, because governments need to move forward.
I was going to say that, you know, in other democracies, in other countries around the world, if you are brought in by an administration to do a job, once that administration is out of office, you are duty-bound to leave with them. We seem to have a different perception of how it's supposed to work.
Well, Prime Minister is not, of course, he is not one as a matter of fact, he doesn't like the word victimization because it appears to be marginalizing behaviors.
If you were appointed to that job, or appointed to that office for a specific purpose by that political party administration, should you leave once the government has changed?
Some people have an inflated view of their usefulness, and they don't want to leave.
Particularly if you were out there campaigning and participating in I mean, there are people who I would have seen actively participating in campaigns who worked in key positions.
Yes. So all I know is the members of this government has to be able to turn their back on whoever is working with them. And they don't feel that they could turn their back on that fella. That fella got to go.
It can't be trusted. Gentlemen, we are at the midway point in our show. Our guests, Andrew Dodd Maynard and Reese Chipman. Gentlemen, we are going to continue our discussion. For those of you watching, stay with us. We are back on the record right after this.
This segment is sponsored by Percy's Island Game.
Love your mom with the Island Game Mother's Day giveaway. Just deposit $20 to your Island Game account to be entered to win one of 5 fabulous Mother's Day packages, including a spa day at Belamonte Spa, Sunday brunch for 4 at Luciano's, a beautiful floral arrangement, and $500 cash. Remember, drawings are every Saturday in May. You have unlimited entries and all accounts must be verified to be eligible. Love your mom some more with the Island Game Mother's Day giveaway.
Honey, you know we're taking the ferry, right?
When you're taking the ferry, you don't have to rush or worry about those kinds of hassles. Your trip begins from the moment you step on board. So when you're planning your next trip, stop with all the hassle and do what feels right. Take the ferry. Bahamas Ferries, we make the connection.
Welcome back to On the Record. If you are just joining us, we are discussing the transition period of the new FNM government and transitioning of the PLP leaders. Our guest tonight, Reese Chipman, the Member of Parliament for Centreville, and Andrew Dodd Maynard, who now supports the FNM, but a former PLP chairman. Gentlemen, there is a lot of reform set to take place, according to the FNM, within the public service, etc., within the ministries. I want to talk a little bit about what that is going to mean or should mean to the efficiency and effectiveness of many of these ministries and people within the public service, and why that's so important.
Well, training is always a key element of productivity, and so we expect that the public service, persons in public service will be trained at all levels of public service, which was also mentioned in the speech from the throne. Also, there's some training for the judiciary, as well as training in terms of policies, procedures, and what is expected out of persons working in these ministries. And so, we're looking forward to a more productive public service, which will also assist us with, of course, coming within our deficit projection.
Why is that important, Dad? Why do you think we really, really need that, particularly at this point in our development?
Well, I hate to say this, but between 1967 and now, procedures in government have gone to hell. They're just allowed to become slack and everybody do as they like. We got people in the public service driving around in a car doing nothing. They're not needed. These jobs are created for them because they're PLP supporters. And that's wrong. It's not fair to you and me for our tax dollars to be flit away that way. That's the first thing. The second thing, they're buying a new car for everybody.
I do see quite a few cars on the road.
We carrying on. Then we had ministers in the PLP government who travel first class and all about and carry their friends with them. All right? Well, this is not a picnic. It is as if they got a sign out there, who want to go on picnic? Check me out, so and so. It needs to be harnessed and regulated.
And it's a cost-saving measure at the end of the day as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. So, gentlemen, the PLP is going through a transition itself. Brave Davis is now the interim opposition leader with no date set for a convention to pick a leader. But what do you think is going to happen to the PLP now that the nation has overwhelmingly told them they have no confidence in the PLP government? What is going to happen? That I'm going to start with you. You spent many years in the PLP, many different positions, most notably chairman.
Well, I don't see Brave Davis being a proper leader. with the greatest respect. Brave say Hubert Ingraham can't talk. But have you listened to Brave talk lately? It doesn't make sense. Brave come and say you're hitting at them and all that stuff. Well, if you mess up the money, what is Mr. Turnquest supposed to say? He's supposed to talk foolishness and don't let the people know who messed up the money? You know, come on, man.
So what do you think is going to happen to the party? Who possibly could emerge as leader, and what is going to happen?
But some of the people I hear talking about leader, they ain't no leader either. At least let's put it this way. And my mother and Eugene Lockhart and Dame Alberta Isaacs time, they couldn't be no leader. Okay? And these are even stranger times. So they need to go look for a leader.
Do you think Alfred Sears is the man to lead the party?
I just tell you, leader on the horizon.
Yeah, well, I didn't, for me, I didn't realize the impact beating Perry Christie would have, even on their own party.
Well, Perry wasn't no leader.
And so it was impactful, and I'm starting to learn quite historical, because it does change not only, I guess it changes someone's legacy at some point, and then it moves now into trying to restore a party.
Can you effectively have a leader of a party who does not sit in the House of Assembly? I know the FNM tried it. In the 2002 period, 2002, 2007, somewhere in there, when Tommy Turnquest sat in the Senate as leader. But can a party have a leader that is not sitting in the House of Assembly?
How is he gonna operate? He can't command the respect of the members. And I say that, I mean, he can't command the respect in that he, who is not a member of the House, can't appoint ministers.
Okay.
We have a system that we operate under, And under that system, Westminster system, the leader is a member of the House, not the Senate, not the upper house. See, senators under our system only argue to get out some bad bread or something, in the Senate. They could raise trouble till the cow come home. They can't change anything. And they can't change what the government sent up there. The Senate has never decided that they're going to amend a bill that's sent to them. Of course, unless the government send them or agreed to do this amendment in the Senate.
As it moves up to that house. So you're looking at really 4 people who could possibly be leader.
No, I mean, who possibly want to be leader?
Well, continuation of a Brave Davis, Glenys Hanna Martin, Chester Cooper, who was the newcomer, and Picewell Ford.
And Chester Cooper don't know how nothing go yet. How you can be the leader? Chester Cooper can't just, this is not, he playing with these people's lives then. Again, Chester Cooper just reach here. How he can get up there and be leader? What does he know about politics? What does he know about keeping things together?
My other question, though, is now what is to become of a Perry Christie? Who would
Perry
have
Christie
served...
go off and hush his mouth before we talk all his business.
Politically, though, I mean, a sitting prime minister loses his seat, loses his position as turns over the position as party leader. This really is not the way a prime minister should leave office.
He was asked to go when he wouldn't go. So he's gone now. And if I had sent some more people out there to campaign with Reese and put some more fellas in there so they couldn't carry on a floating ballot election day, he would have been beaten by at least 200 more votes.
So you think some skullduggery happened election day?
Man, and these fellas didn't catch on quickly.
Well, you know, it really was a challenging day. And we actually caught a fella coming out of the booth. He bought a ballot out of the booth, which is not allowed. And so my polling captains caught him. And then, of course, we called the police officers, returning officers, and we had them all there to decide on how we will move forward in terms of keeping the polling station open. But we did have challenges in quite a number of the polling divisions, polling stations, with ballots, the attempt of ballot movement outside of the facility.
Is it time? I mean, it bewilders me every time I hear stuff like that. You know, people are still in this day and time, in this era, attempting to carry out fraud on election day. But is it time for us now to reform our electoral process? Is it time to move forward from that paper ballot?
It's past time.
And this indelible ink and the messiness of all of that.
You can't carry on a floating ballot if you go there and you punch certain numbers or certain names.
Any plans to move forward to prosecute or deal with any of these issues that would have taken place within your constituency during the election?
Well, we do. You know, we are familiar with who the individual is in that particular case where we would have caught them outside. And the thought, we are still, you know, in most cases, issues like that would come out if there was a case of election court, etc. However, I think we should look at bringing these people to justice just to show that this is something that you cannot do, and moving forward that you cannot do.
We need to make examples of people.
Police were supposed to lock up the fellow with the extra ballot and keep him locked up until he tell them who he get the ballot from to start with, that he took in there.
Yeah, eventually it was agreed for him to go back in and place the ballot where it should be, which is his ballot into the box. However, it should not have come out.
I don't understand. You are supposed to show the presiding officer your ballot and put it in the box.
And put it in the box.
No, well, apparently he went outside the door, and so the polling captain saw him, and that's how we got to that point.
Wow.
So I had to run from Centerville over to Columbus to try to resolve that issue.
Interesting. Election day stories continue. Gentlemen, we are at the place now of our final break, our discussions on this whole transitional period, transition for the Free National Movement government, as well as the transition for the opposition PLP. We'll see you right on the other side of this break.
With a world of offers from Alive, you can set yourself free. Buy any $99 handset and get a second handset free. Plus everything you need for both phones, all for free. It's our biggest offer ever. We are Alive.
We are back with more On the Record. We are discussing transitioning and the budget presented by the Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Peter Turnquest. The fiscal situation in the Bahamas, as he described it, is far more bleak than I think they would have outwardly anticipated and spoken to. In a situation like this, realistically, what is the timeline for people to sort of allow a new government to position itself and do what needs to be done? I mean, the honeymoon in politics doesn't last very long. What is the realistic timeline for, you know, people, for when people will begin to or want to begin to see things happen?
They want to see you doing something in 6 months. They want to see you do certain things right away, which are being done. Mm-hmm. But they want to see some results within 6 months. Mind, they start grumbling before then, but they really go crazy if nothing is happening in 6 months. Or if they can't see. And I ain't talking about them promises like how Perry used to get, oh, I got somebody who ready to do this, hell and all, and ain't nothing happening. You check how many things he got excited over and got people excited about, and nothing happened. Okay? We are serious about not going to the public and get them all riled up until we're sure we got the fish in the boat.
One of the interesting things here, we're going to go to that now. The Minister of Finance says that the Christie administration oversaw the single largest run-up of debt in the history of the Bahamas. We're now going to take a look at the excerpt of that from the budget communication.
The fiscal situation in the current fiscal year is far, far bleaker than we could ever have imagined. Our predecessors have literally left us with the cupboard totally bare. The stark facts are as follows. The deficit outturn in the current fiscal year features a significant deterioration as compared to the fiscal projections contained in the previous administration's final budget. While they had forecasted a GFS deficit of 100 million, the actual outturn is now expected to be in the order of 500 million.
Better repeat that. You better repeat that.
Yeah, let me repeat that. Yeah. While the side opposite, while in government, in their last budget, had projected a GFS deficit of 100 million, the actual outturn is now expected to be in the order of $500 million.
That's the facts you're talking about now.
And we're going to have to deal with that number in a minute.
That obviously set the groundwork for, I would call, a setting of expectations. Obviously, some promises were made during the campaign. How do you go back to your constituents now? What do you say to people who have a level of expectation coming out of the election with such a resounding win, particularly in an area like yours, which is an economically depressed area in the inner city? What do you say to your constituents?
Yeah, that is a challenge, transitioning from campaign to administration. And I think one of the key things is to communicate. Now, we will go there, we're still there setting up the office, getting it ready to administer, getting out of the campaign mode. And to a degree, they don't understand what that is. And so we got to communicate with them, letting them know that you got to allow me to set up, because only if I am set up properly am I able to help to service you. And so that is part of them understanding that your constituency office will be open. You will have someone in there because we do have an allowance for that. That's a part of the budget. And once they understand that the budget begins July 1st, that means we're in this process of reorganizing. And so what we do now is we'll take notes. We will let that wherever we can help. For example, there's a summer program for students. We would have sent about 15 persons, 15 of the young kids over 15 to get employment for the 4 to 6 week program. And thanks to Minister Pintard for at least, the communication was there for him to at least let us know that this is something that we can do to help in the meantime. And so you have to communicate. You have to communicate the transition. And in my communication, I always say to them as well, you will be very happy with what we will do or will be able to do once you allow me the time to set up properly.
How does one balance meeting the needs of your constituents with carrying out the work of the government? Because the work of the government is this monster over here that needs attention, and all of these things are going on. But your constituents need your assistance too. And oftentimes you hear people say, oh, I haven't seen my representative in 5 years. He hasn't come around. She hasn't been seen. And you hear them say, oh, well, I've been busy working in government. I'm working for you doing these things. How do you balance those things when you've got governments work with constituency needs?
Well, you got government work, right? The only way that could work for you is if you've got people there who you could turn your back on. You got to have people you could trust. Then you could go and see your constituents, because if you give instructions and it's passed down through the ranks properly, they'll be carried out. But if you have a situation where you're giving instructions and it's not going down through the ranks and you're not getting cooperation, if you got, for instance, a permanent secretary who taken advice from her last or his last minister from the last government, when you tell him to do something, or her, you're in trouble. And when you find that your work is not getting done in a timely fashion, or your instructions aren't being done in a timely fashion, then you have to let the Prime Minister know, because the Prime Minister appoints permanent secretaries, you know. Let the Prime Minister know, listen, this person is not carrying out the instructions. For instance, you go to Cabinet, and the Cabinet decides on something that affects your ministry. You then have to get a Cabinet conclusion from the Prime Minister's office, from the Secretary of the Cabinet. And when you get your copy, you give it to your permanent secretary, and you draw it to their attention, and you explain to them exactly how it is to be done. Not if it is to be done. It has to be done. It's a Cabinet conclusion. So therefore, the thing you need to watch is whether or not your permanent secretary is carrying out the instructions.
Well, on the flip side of that, actually, I find it to be easier to set up the constituency office easier than setting up or being in some ministry, because the constituency office, like now, what we're working on is an organizational structure, the vision, policies and procedures, job descriptions, right? And at some point, the manager is responsible for dealing with ministries, in case someone comes and needs social services, jobs, etc. And then you have an administrator that's dealing with the polling divisions and dealing with the community. And in fact, just identifying what the needs are in the community. And then you have a we have a constituency receptionist. And so it all helps us to keep track of what we're doing in the community to help, and of course, a timeline for results, because we campaigned on results.
It really is a business at the end of the day, not someone sitting in there answering the phone and greeting people when they come in.
Absolutely, it's a business. It has its budget, and we have to ensure that we meet the budget. And if we need any more than we would be in a position possibly to have to fundraise. And as you would have seen, a bill was presented yesterday in Parliament dealing with the $100,000 for the constituency office, which is something that the FNM started in terms of for whatever commitments there are for the constituency. And so now that is going to be, a bill was presented to have some guidelines in terms of the spending of those funds as well.
How do you avoid a situation, for instance, that Shane Gibson would have found himself in, where monies are being sent to a bank account from a donor for scholarships, and then there's a question raised about the administration of these funds and who's receiving them, where they're going, and so how do you avoid that happening so you don't find yourself in a position where it seems as an MP or even a minister is receiving money seemingly for something else?
Well, as a matter of fact, we are expected to establish a bank account in the name of the constituency, right? The funds that go through that bank account are also up for audit by the Auditor General. And so the Auditor General, if he so is so inclined to investigate, he also can call into question your use of the funds that go through the through the constituency account. And so there is some check and balance. Where,
you had a comment. I want to go to Auditor General in a minute.
You really believe the money went to his constituency account? Because if you believe that, you believe I own the Paradise Island Bridge. That's all I have to say to that.
Okay. The new government is proposing to introduce legislation to strengthen the office of the Auditor General and provide it with the resources necessary to effectively and properly discharge its responsibilities as mandated by the Constitution without any undue interference from the government. Why is this such an important measure, considering some things that happened previously with the Auditor General?
Absolutely. Constitutionally, it is an independent office. And based on the experiences in terms of the Auditor General and his report on, for one particular example, urban renewal, and we just couldn't get to the bottom of it. And I think that, and sometimes that happens when politics is involved in the process. So I think that this initiative to strengthen the resources and of the Auditor General's department is something that I myself am looking forward to.
When you say strengthen resources, explain that and why is that so important?
Well, it's important because when you look at capacity building of any institution, right, when you look at the resources and when we get to the public service, sometimes qualifications are not an issue. And when we look at the Auditor General and when we talk about strengthening it, we want to make sure that those persons that are there, sufficient are there to begin with, and then those persons that are there qualified to deal with the structural impediments that are involved with ensuring that the report is what it should be and that it goes where it should go.
I want to bring a little focus to Grand Bahama and even the Family Islands. The Grand Bahama economy has been struggling. Unemployment, 13.3% on that island alone. How vital is it for this government to pay some specific attention with some specific projects for Grand Bahama and some Family Islands? How important is that to them?
They are paying attention to it as we speak. Grand Bahama has been allowed to go to the dogs, so to speak. And then along came this hurricane and tore the residences to pieces. And then that happened in when?
It was last August, September, somewhere around September.
My God, man, it's almost August, September again. And nothing has been done for those people. This government is going to do something for them.
And why is it important, though, to keep sort of those Family Islands?
And these fellas who didn't do anything for these people, some of them born and grew up there, you know. So how could you treat your people who you grew up together like that?
From a political side, though, I guess, how do you why is it important to ring fence? I mean, we get so caught up with New Providence and what Nasuvians need. But how important is that to your government?
I think it's very important, and that is Grand Bahama is one of those. It's a pillar of our society in terms of the next largest amount of residents. The youth unemployment in those areas are also very high. I mean, Nassau is as high as well, but we have to look, a big part of the speech from the throne and our administration's vision is really the development of youth, their empowerment, their involvement, their engagement. And I think we do have a lot of younger people on those islands. Not only are we looking at youth development, but we have to look at the economic development of those islands, in terms of whether we're going to have, whether it will be technology-based, tourism-based, but the islands are a big concern for us in terms of how we move forward as a country in terms of their development. So yeah, there are some key items in our agenda that we're looking forward to addressing in terms of the islands.
One of the things that I find interesting is the mix around the cabinet table of old faces and new. And how does the Prime Minister now balance the experience of some of the older members who would have sat around that table before with the young, inexperienced in some ways, inexperienced in government? How does he balance that to ensure that there's not sort of that rift or creates an issue, and that everybody is on one accord moving forward?
Well, first of all, I think he has already said to his members around the table, we have to do this, these are priorities, right? Now, once you've done that, then you get the fellas around the table to take their section of what has to be done, right? And come up with ideas on how they're going to get it done efficiently. You know, for instance, we're in a terrible state of affairs. We have young people coming out of school who cannot read. And that's a person who can't read, can't reason. Mm-hmm. So no wonder we have so many people on the street killing one another. Because they don't know how to read and they don't know how to reason. They don't know how to have some patience with this fella or that girl. And beating up women and all that sort of thing, that got to stop. No nation can rise above the standard of its womanhood. We got fellas in high places who beating up their wife.
Well, and you know, the Dr. Minnis, I've seen, you were asking how would he balance the old and the younger, and he is most effective in that area. And I've watched him during the campaign. And, you know, he was able to bring the older minds together with this youth movement that built such campaign capacity. It was just unbelievable to me. And it really motivated me throughout the campaign process. And I would have said it to him throughout that time. But when you talk about balancing experience and knowledge and new minds, it all came together during the campaign, and that is why we were very successful at the polls. Is that we had a youth movement that was just unbelievable. I mean, they spurred a lot of intensity in terms of the campaign. They fired you up, okay, and you know, a lot of it, and they were doing this with their own energy and initiative, of course, supported by Dr. Minnis. And then we had the more mature persons like Mr. Maynard, who would train us in terms of what it is we need to do, look out for at the polls, the historical nature of politics and the elections. And then we had, of course, mid-age groups that were responsible for giving us legal counsel, putting together the campaign platforms, and we would meet in groups and have these workshops. It was just a lot of good energy, and of course led to a successful campaign.
It's like a very dynamic campaign in many ways. Gentlemen,
in other words, we had more energy than money.
Well, that is a good thing. That is a good thing. Gentlemen, I think on that note, we're going to end the show. I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us here this evening. I'm sure for most of the audiences, it has been very, very insightful and interesting. Reese, all the best to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
In the way forward. We really appreciate you stopping by today. Mr. Maynard, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending time
Thanks for having me, and thanks for having Reese, because I'm glad that Reese was here. To make the public know that that picture on social media is not him.
Thank you for I'm
That
glad that
person
he
is
shared
mother.
that. Yes, thank you very much. Gentlemen, thanks again. We hope that you have enjoyed our show tonight. Special thanks to Reese Chipman and Andrew Dud Maynard, to my producer. And before we go, technical staff as well, thank you. I want to say a special congratulations to our director, Aiken Barr, on the birth of his daughter. Congratulations to him and his wife. Aiken, all the best. We congratulate you from all of us here. Good job. We can't wait for you to get back to work, but we know you've got some things to do. Once again, I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. It's been my pleasure. We'll see you next time.